Hi guys, welcome to sphonsccw Beginner Series on Shooting Fundamentals. If you like what you see, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks guys.
Down the armory. We're going to talk about choosing the right self-defense firearm. Now, generally when we see people show up to a concealed carry class or a defensive handgun class, they have a lot of questions about what is the right gun for them. Now, we're going to try and highlight some points of what you need to know to choose the right firearm for you. What we see a lot is people will gravitate toward the larger firearms, and then they gravitate toward the super small ones, the LCPs and the bodyguards, and then they end up somewhere in the middle. Now, that takes a lot of money out of everybody's budget, so what we need to do is we need to highlight some points of what do we need to look for. First off, your preferred method, or the method you're thinking about using to carry your firearm, is going to make a difference. So if you're in a bag or purse, off body, that bag gets really heavy when you're carrying a full-size firearm. Same thing happens when you're carrying it on your belt in the waistband. So that's why people tend to end up with a large firearm. They figure out that it's too heavy to carry around for them, and then they go to the super small one, and then they find out that they're very hard to shoot. So we got a pretty good selection here. Some of these firearms I carry on a regular basis. Some of them I carry from time to time. The first thing you need to do is find out whether your handgun fits you, okay? And there's a real simple way to do that. All you really need to do is grasp the handgun, extend your arm out, and make sure that the sights line up with the bones in your wrist, okay? Now, you want to get them as close as possible. If the firearm's to the inside toward your thumb, generally the grip is too big. If it's toward the outside, generally the grip is too small, okay? What that's going to do is that's going to put your recoil force back through your skeletal structure, and it's really going to tame it. If it's too big, you're going to have a lot of wrist pain, okay? So that's the first thing. Second thing is trigger reach. Can you reach the trigger without stretching, okay? Now, there's a lot of firearms here, and a lot of them got pretty close to the same trigger reach. Where you generally end up with trigger reach problems is in your revolvers, okay? Now, my fingers are pretty long, so I really don't have too much trouble. But the thing is, this Ruger has probably got the longest trigger reach, and my fingers are pretty long, and it's right out to the end of my finger for the reach. This Rock Island Armory, pretty close to the same, okay? So that's where you're going to run into trigger reach problems. Now this Taurus 357 you're not going to carry, but it's a useful tool, and it's very fun on the range. Very little recoil with 38 specials. But once again, you have trigger reach issues. Now, the second thing is manipulation. We've seen several of these little Ruger LCRs in 22 long rifle and 22 Magnum. They have a very stiff trigger pull. So you're going to want to try the trigger. Make sure that you can actuate the trigger, okay? Doesn't matter what revolver you pick up, make sure that you can pull the trigger. In double action, it's going to be a lot stiffer than in single action, okay? Single action I'm talking about with the hammer cocked. Now with your semi-automatics, can you manipulate the slide? We see this time and time and time again, where somebody will buy a compact handgun and they cannot manipulate the slide, okay? Now there's a couple things that you can do to kind of make that easier. First one, extend your arm all the way out and then grasp the slide on the serrations and use your shoulders to actuate the slide, so that you're not using your arm strength. You can do it either way, okay? The other thing is you can point it straight down at the ground and do the same thing, all right? But the thing is, there's a lot of different handguns here, and some of the slides are very hard to manipulate, some of them are very easy. Walther's answer to that is the CCP. It's kind of got a goofy gas system in here, but the slide is very easy to manipulate. Okay. Walter PK380s, very popular in our classes. The slide is very easy to use. Okay. Main problem with this is you cannot lock the slide back unless you have a loaded magazine. Now, you see I just put my finger in there and pulled up on the lever. 22s. Okay, this is a M&P 22 compact. Very, very fun range gun. It's pretty reliable. I don't ever recommend somebody carrying a 22. That's got to do with the reliability of the ammunition. But the slide is very easy to manipulate. And the thing about it is, the more you practice, the easier it is to manipulate the slide. It's more about muscle memory than it is strength. Now, when you get up, probably the 40 calibers are probably the hardest ones to manipulate. This has got the toughest slide of any handgun that I own, including the XDM 45. The 45 is actually easier to manipulate than the 40 is because it's got a stiffer spring. So those are some good points to kind of take in. The other thing that you're going to want to be able to do is actuate the magazine release. Now, depending upon whether you're right or left-handed, some of them are ambidextrous, some of them are not. So you're going to want to take that into account. The Walters sometimes have a little trigger guard mechanism here that's a magazine release. That's pretty ambidextrous. A lot of people, this confuses a lot of people, but once you get used to it, it's very easy to manipulate. You do have to really pay attention to your finger discipline because it's so close to the trigger. Some of them, of the magazine releases, are reversible. The CCP has had this reversed for a right-handed shooter, so she could push it with her finger rather than on the backside from her thumb, because her thumb is a Mona. So that's another part of that you're going to want to take into account, is being able to get rid of the magazine or replace it if you need. So there's a few points for you to ponder. Fit is going to be the big thing. The other thing that we have a lot of questions on is recoil. Now, most of these guns on the table have got pretty close to the same recoil, except for the little snubs. Now, we see a lot of these with first-time shooters looking to conceal carry, and I gotta be honest, they're great for carrying, but they are not easy to shoot and hit your target rapidly or accurately with. So if you're gonna buy a snub revolver, you're gonna want to put your time in with your range practice. This isn't going to be something you're just going to pick up and shoot an 1.5 or 2 inch group with at 25 feet the first time out, not unless you got a lot of experience shooting one of these. The compact semi-automatics are much easier to shoot than the compact revolvers. That just got to do with sight radius. Okay, so that's another point to consider. Weight of the firearm is going to be another thing that you're going to want to consider. This revolver is much heavier than this one. This handgun is much heavier than this one. Now, weight's going to affect recoil. The higher the weight of the firearm without any ammunition in it, the more it's going to tame the recoil. So you're going to want to consider that. Just because two guns are, the same caliber, two 9mm guns, doesn't mean that they're going to fit the same. So you're going to want to handle as many as possible and kind of come up with what you like the best and then stick with that. Those are points to consider.